with all due respect to all of us in the society,
Yes.
are we getting dumber?
Yes.
That's really all I wanted to know.
Yes. Yeah, this is short.
But before we do that, because I haven't. You liked the quote from the book so much that I'm gonna give you. We'll give a chance to comment.
Let's
on that.
do another one.
It's always good. It's always good. No, it's the same quote.
Oh, okay.
I don't want to have to find another one, but you know, so for both of our loyal fans that have seen every episode, they know that I pulled the book out on occasion just to kind of say, like, this is what the Epic of America, the American Dream. This was the guy who first kind of came up with the notion. 1931, he wrote the book. This is a 1932 printing, so you got to be very careful with the spine. And here's the quote that you see that people quote a lot of times from this book is where he spends the whole book telling the story of the history of America up until 1931, and he says what we've done is we've created a place where he says this place which he describes as the American Dream, a dream of a land in which life should be better and richer and fuller for everybody, with opportunity for each according to his ability or achievement. And then he qualifies after a little bit of other fluff, because he says, this is kind of hard sometimes for European classes to interpret adequately at the time. But he says, it is not a dream of motor cars and high wages merely, but a dream of a social order in which each man and each woman shall be able to attain to the fullest stature of which they are innately capable, and be recognized by others for what they are, regardless of the fortuitous circumstances of birth or position. And so I read that before, and you were like,
I love it.
that's America.
I want it. Yeah, that's America. I want it on a shirt.
You want
Yeah.
It's maybe that's what we need to do.
I like
We
it.
need to get it on a shirt. So what stands out to you about that?
Well, I've spent some time thinking about this, actually, and it primarily stems from in the 2005, maybe it was closer to 2010 time frame. There was this thing known as the Big Shift, and that was when you had the baby boomers within oil and gas were retiring, and there wasn't enough backfill. And how are you going to have this big shift in work and all that knowledge that lives in the minds of the petroleum engineers or whomever, and getting it down to the new individuals that came in. And I saw this consultant, and she had written a book, and it was at some networking event, and she said that you could follow through time where each generation there might be some improvement, where the idea of, I don't want my kids to struggle as much as I did. I want them to have more than I did.
Yep.
That there might be some improvement to that, but for the most part, it was pretty flat and pretty steady until the 1950s. And then in the 1950s, technology reached a point to where it actually could be, you had some money on the side and you had technology that made life easier and noticeable enough to where you began to see jumps in how hard someone worked versus how hard someone didn't the generation prior.
Right. There was like a new leverage in the
Bingo.
Right, in the machine.
Yes,
right.
like we're starting to, hockey stick.
Right.
We're no longer linear. We're
Mark Mills would agree with you, by the way.
exponential.
The guy that wrote this book. Cloud Revolution. That's Mark Mills.
Yes.
That's I know Trevor came off the mic. He essentially that's basically his whole campaign, is that technology enabled us to do that hockey stick.
And what my thought was, to go back to the comment of, do I think we're dumber today than we were? And I believe we are. And I think it boils down to, and this is a little bit of what we had shared at our beer drinking brilliance, is I believe technology has now allowed the weak and the inept to survive, whereas without that technology 100, 500,000 years ago, they're not surviving. Like, they don't make it. So the technology is elevated, like all water, water raises all boats kind of thing. But some of the weak are staying around.
So funny you should say
Draining.
This was not planned out. Trev, can you pull up the one about Victorian era people being smarter than us today.
Oh, I don't doubt it.
Yeah. So it's funny. So your observation, so far, everything you're saying is resonating with all the great minds. So,
Excellent.
no, not that one. The one about yeah, this one. Researchers suggest Victorian era people are more intelligent than modern day. Now, so this is about it. So this was, what year was this from? It was zero in on Queen Victoria. Queen Victoria is not really the point of this.
But she looks like she's smart.
She looks smart though.
She has her stuff together. I'm with her.
What they did was so obviously you can't go back and test people's IQ from 150 years ago.
Right.
For those following along at home who didn't take history, the Victorian era is the 1800s for the most part, right? And but they did this. They can't do IQ tests, so they came up with this idea of reaction time or something like that, RT. And to be honest, I don't know exactly how they did it, but basically they figured out that in fact the indication would show that people were smarter. Now there's another one. Trev, pull up.
That's really interesting. I saw a similar thing, reaction time, with chimpanzees.
Oh shoot, I don't have the other one that I pulled up. But so there's another article that references this same study, and there were two. There was a study. There was a study in 2007, and another one. No, one in 2013, one in 2017. I don't remember. But this other guy went, and this was controversial, but he went so far as to say that it's because he was talking about medical science, and said medical science is causing people to live longer, like
yes, yes.
and whereas
I know a few.
and basically like natural selection is not strengthening.
Bingo. Survival of the fittest is kind of thrown out of the window, so to speak.
Right.
Because we're keeping them around.
So there's an uncomfortable fact in all this, which I'm sure that there's some segment of people right now that are probably already offended.
Yeah, sorry.
None of them are watching. No, because it kind of, we have to sort of admit the fact that not everybody is as smart as everybody else.
Right.
Right. So, and there's different types of smart, right? I always fell into the streetwise category, but he's not smart, but he's streetwise. But does that mean that society is does that mean that people who aren't as smart aren't as valuable or shouldn't be allowed to? I mean, this is sounding a little bit Logan's Run-ish, right? Oh, now that nature's not taking care of it anymore, we need to do something to get rid of the people who don't.
No, I don't feel like it's quite that, but it does change, I think, the approach, whatever that may be. The bigger, survival of the fittest, it did have a purpose, and I think maybe the purpose is different, whether it be from social programs, funding, enablement, training, education, whatever the case may be. But I don't think it's necessarily that they're worth less. However, I would argue, have you ever worked in the service industry, like the public, like with the general public?
Grocery store. But I was mostly stocking groceries at night. I didn't really
interact with
the people very much.
I think there could be I'm sure there are enough people out there that have worked fast food or worked at retail store or something along those lines that.
I think he found it. Is that
there
the one?
It is.
What's the headline on that one, Trev? Oh, okay. It's not the one that I found, but is that what it says?
No, but there is.
What'd you find?
This interesting bit right here.
This dramatic increase in life expectancy did not come with a proportionate increase in the quality of life for the elderly. Increased life expectancy as a risk of disease, disability, blah, blah, blah. In the past, people died young.
Yeah, so yeah, this puts increasing pressure on the economy and social systems in most countries. That's kind of where I was going with it. Is I do think it, and maybe they're really smart or thinking through this. I don't think they're less, but nonetheless, you have a gap that's widening. And I think that's because of technology and just overall where we are. I mean, there's a lot of people that don't do anything.
Yeah, so about the service industries. Wait a minute. Okay, I got to come back to people that don't do anything. And actually, so I want to make sure we cover a couple things. One is we skipped over the part where I was planning on we would talk about why we think we're getting dumber. Or not why we think we're getting dumber, but what evidence do we see that tells us we're getting dumber? Mm-hmm. So I want to come back to that.
I got something there.
Because we just took it as a given.
Yeah.
I asked you, are we getting dumber? And you said yes, and then we moved on. And I also, and a lot of people who do nothing, which probably doesn't help. But your story about, I remember this because when we were at walkouts or walkthroughs or whatever the place was, you said you worked retail, right, in college, I guess, right?
I worked at Target.
Yeah. Okay.
Right.
I mean,
actually, I worked retail from 16 up to like 21. Target was my last retail job in college.
All right. And so, what did that tell you about society?
Well, I mean, I think where you're going on is it gives you a good idea of the level of intelligence that is or that exists or doesn't exist in public. And the example I gave is there was a lady, I worked at Target, she was probably, I don't know, 50, and she got lost in Target, and we were in the back of Target, and she was asking, where's the front door? How do we get out? And I found myself questioning.
Trevor's losing it.
I found myself. Now, in hindsight,
was she disoriented? Could she have been a mental patient or something?
She looked like she was all there. As far as like her bag or cart looked normal, she looked normal. But I've been around enough as we get older, you around people that are just beyond stress, could have been having a really rough day and couldn't figure it out.
Right.
But I still come back to, I guess, Target. There's main wide lanes. There's no doors where you're at. Bet that way they're probably, I mean, like if Target kicked your ass.
Yeah.
Finding your way out of a Target kicked your ass.
Yeah.
That was what kind of started the whole, are we getting better? Are we getting smarter?
Right.
And I don't think we are.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure we're not.
So here's my my example. And of course I don't want to be guilty of doing what sometimes I criticize other people doing, which is taking one data point and like building a whole narrative around it, right? But you're saying that what you saw kind of working in the public is it just wasn't teeming with really sharp critical thinking, right?
Yeah, no.
You
saw dumb way more than you saw smart.
Yeah.
I mean,
and it begs the question, is it that we're not smart, or that we're bad at thinking?
I've thought this as well. I don't know. I mean, it's a good question. Are we actually getting dumber because we're not thinking, because we're using tools, internet, Google search, all that good stuff? But is the same level of critical thinking, is that capability still there? It's just used in a different way. I'm not sure.
Yeah, maybe yeah.
I think laziness has a lot to do with it.
Yeah.
Because I've had this discussion with Google searching. Now, Chat GPT and all that will probably change it. See?
Is that her?
No, that wasn't her. I would have helped her find her way out.
She doesn't look like she's 50.
Yeah.
She was a little dehydrated and disoriented when we found her lodged between some live, laugh, love, and blessed signs. I don't know what that means. But she's going to be okay.
She's made it.
She's 26.
She made it good.
So unless somebody
That's funny that I wasn't the only one that ran across.
Yeah, lest somebody accuse you of ageism, you see it happened with a 26-year-old as well. We were never going to stop looking for her because unlike hundreds of women of color who are still missing and never had a full search team look for them. So they had a full search team inside the Target?
Is this like a...
This is the needling, which is
She is at least a 7 out of 10. Where did you... What are we looking at right now? What the hell is
needling?
This? The needling. Seattle's only real fake news. Oh, this isn't real.
That's funny.
I thought it was funny.
All right.
But maybe they were there. Maybe that's where they got the story. They're like, no, I saw people get lost.
I saw people get lost in Target. So, hey, but pull up, Trev. There's one about. This is my favorite. This is my example about like how do we get to where maybe we're not good at thinking, maybe we're not, but. The adult estimates of COVID-19 hospitalization risk. Get that one there? Okay. I remember when this is from, what is it, September 2021. Okay, so now I don't want to do an episode about COVID, but it's one of the most recent examples that kind of gives us some reflective social commentary.
Okay.
And these guys, they did it. All right, so wait, go back up. This was a who did this? This was a yeah, go up more. Okay.
Gallup
poll. Yeah. So this is so this isn't some weirdo group, right? Like some extreme group trying to push some false narrative. This is Gallup. Gallup did a survey. This is a year and a half, more or less, into COVID. Mm-hmm. Okay. And what they asked was, how many if you get COVID, what's the probability that you're going to be in the hospital? And they asked a whole bunch of people. Now, interestingly, just to make it even more fun, they kept track of Republicans versus Democrats versus Independents.
Nice.
Because we always got to look at which team is winning.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And go down. There's a chart, Trev. No, not that one.
Sure.
There we go.
All
right. Now this is specifically they asked the question, how much do you think of what do you think is the risk for unvaccinated and what do you think about vaccinated? And this is the chart for unvaccinated, but it doesn't they're both similar. It doesn't matter. The other one is further down. So just to digest what we're looking at here, if you look over to the right,
yes.
41% of Democrats, 22% of Republicans, and 26% of independents. So a lot of people said that the risk of being hospitalized if you get COVID was 50% or higher. Mm-hmm. If you look at what they thought about vaccinated, the numbers were a little bit lower. Do you know what the right answer was at this time? Between 1 and 5%. So at a time when somewhere, so for those who aren't good at math, I'll convert the percentage to real numbers.
Yeah.
Somewhere between 1 and 5 out of every 100 people would end up hospitalized. But the public thought it was like better than half, like 50 plus out of everybody that got COVID was hospitalized. Now, I feel like you could just look around and see that was probably not the case.
Well, you'd have to turn off mainstream media regardless of what your flavor was.
So it's one thing to say, hey, look, there were a lot of numbers flying around at that time. We can't keep the numbers straight.
Or, hey, I had COVID and I survived it.
Yeah, right. And so did my friend.
And so did my friends.
So
I mean, I'm just throwing it out.
So I'm not like ragging on people because they didn't get the numbers right.
But it says it's telling.
But they missed by a order of 10.
Yes.
Or by one magnitude. So how do you and so just stop for a moment and think, what would the world have been like if it were true that better than 50% of people that got COVID ended up in the hospital?
Oh, that's a great question.
That would have been
like it would. That's a great question. How would things have changed? Actually, I think it'd have been significant.
Right,
significant.
And so it only takes a little bit of thinking. So even if you're not up on the latest stats, and even if you don't know that the answer is between 1 and 5, to think that it's more than half somebody's giving you that impression. Somebody is giving you an impression about a reality that's so far removed from real reality.
I like where you're going with this, Michael. Yeah.
And you haven't even thought about it enough to realize
You
that
have no
doesn't make sense.
way of critical thinking on your own.
Right.
And it just shows you right there. That's
Right.
brilliant. You did a nice job there.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
It's
Well,
a great, it shows a large chunk, regardless of political stance, that still can't critically think on
The
their own.
Republicans were more optimistic than the Democrats, so you expect that for that particular thing. But yeah, so my question is, so you who have thought about these things, how did we get to the point that we could have an impression? It's almost like saying, I believe that the sky is falling, the pieces are hitting my driveway. I have no visual evidence that that's happening, but
it's happening.
But that's what's happening.
Yeah.
How do we get to that point?
I don't know. I think it's a mix of a lot of things. I think going back, I really do believe there's a issue with laziness. Technology's made us lazy. Very. I mean, you just look at the obesity in this country. It's pretty off the charts. There's a lot to that, but I think laziness is one of them. And where I'm going with it more specifically is, we had a discussion once where my friend of mine and I on the laziness of even Google searching. Now, OpenAI and ChatGPT, it may change that a little bit. That's a whole different discussion. But I can't tell you the number of times, seriously, where with family members where they had done a search and never even clicked on the link to do their own reading. It just, they trusted by the highlights that the search results came back.
That Google gives you.
That's
where
was
they
in
draw
there.
their
That would
conclusions
draw
from.
their conclusion. Like, wouldn't even take the step of like, hey, make the extra click. Actually, open the damn thing up and read it. And lo and behold, it actually says something opposite of what's in that headline that it's getting. But they don't get there.
Google does that on purpose, you know.
Bingo, they do that. So there's this mass manipulation, that could take place. This social psychosis.
What was that? Mass formation psychosis. Which I don't know. You know, I've seen some crazy things, but yeah, I think that, I mean, this is what I thought about a lot. The thing that, and I think you and I talked about this before, but with all the things that were happening in the last couple of years. By the way, the ChatGPT episode is going to be week after next, so 2 weeks.
Who do you have coming in to talk about that?
Ration Tulsi is going to talk about
all right.
ChatGPT. So
I'd love to hear it.
Yeah. In fact, well, okay, I don't want to get off track. What was I going to say? Oh, the thing that I have thought about is, and I've said this before, I think, just in passing on some other episodes, but so when we were kids, and you and I are, there's a few years between us, I think you're probably like right at the end of the Gen X, the early, you're the early, no, not early, end of Gen X, right before millennials, right? Kind of like right there, end of
ballpark.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to imply that you might be. Anyway,
No,
but you're later.
I'm a millennial.
You're later in the. You're late in the Gen X crew, and I'm like at the very beginning of the Gen X crew.
When's the Gen X?
It went through like 85, so you're in the middle of it.
Yes.
Yeah, you're in the middle. You're in the.
Yeah, I think I'm dead
You're in the
center.
middle. You're in the middle of it. That's right.
There you go. Dead center.
1980. Oh, 1980. Okay.
All right, I'm dead center.
And
Gen X.
So I'm 66. So I'm like I missed being a boomer by like 2 years, and you're in the middle. So when we were growing up, our parents, the way they got the news, and I don't know about you, but this was before cable. Before cable news.
No.
Well, people had cable TV. Some people did. The rich people did. But like we didn't have like the cable news channels and the 24/7, right? So the way your parents got the news was got a newspaper. You know, a newspaper only says so much, and maybe they watched the evening news. You know, so the pipe of information coming at you in a way of news was very small.
Yeah.
And basically, what you got was I'm gonna use this term, the facts, because I realize that there could still be some journalistic bias and maybe they weren't the facts. But the point was, what you got was, this is what happened, right? And then, and maybe a little bit of commentary. You know,
You
maybe
came up with this on your own because this is nice. I like where you're
you're
going
like,
with it.
well, okay, yeah, I did. Thank you. Are you surprised?
Yeah. No, I'm not, but I do like where you're
And
going
then
with
you
it.
kind of had to like,
It's observant.
you had to figure out, you had to decide what you thought about that and what ought to be done about that. You had to form your own opinions about that, either by thinking about it or maybe by talking to your friends and see what they thought, or, you know, like you had to like do some mental work to fill in, you know, okay, that's what happened, or this is what's happening. The president is doing this. What do I think about that? Is it good? Is it bad? Right? And so you had to kind of use your own. So you had to do something to figure out, you know, what do I think about that? What does it mean? Now, so then we go through. So first we get cable. We get 24/7 cable news, right? Then we get the internet with all the news stations also having websites, and then we get social media, and we get like all that, to where not only do we have a 24/7 news cycle, but there's a lot of threads, right? So all that has to be filled up with something, and there's not enough happenings to fill it up with. Like, that much shit just doesn't happen.
Yeah.
So, you know, and since we're leaving out most of the stuff that really matters, so you got to fill up all of that programming time, or all that web time, or all that whatever. And so what do we fill it up with? We fill it up with people, more and more talking heads, telling you not only what happened, but what you should think about it, what it means,
Yep.
what you should think about it, and what you should do about it. Like, all those blanks get filled in for you, because what else are we going to fill up that space with?
Bingo.
Right?
Yep.
And so I don't have to think anymore. I just, you know, and I can pick whichever side I want. You know, do I want to like follow what the red side's telling me, or what the blue side's telling me?
Yeah.
Like, and I don't have to. Do you know what I mean? Like,
I see it
it's-
100%. Yeah.
Yeah.
Think for me. Tell me how I should think. I just sit here and listen to it and absorb it.
Right.
I mean, that's
And react.
and react
Right.
minimally. Maybe, I don't know. Maybe some have gotten fired up over some things, but yeah, no. I think I like where you're going with it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then the noise gets louder and louder the further we advance the technology. Like, you just walk through that evolution or progression of
Right.
going from radio, newspaper, TV,
Yeah,
all the
and-
way to what we have today, where we are bombarded. And you can just sit there and kick back if you so choose, and you can't think critically going back to your damn.
Yeah. 'Cause-
Yeah, because nobody can look around and be like, I had COVID. I didn't end up in the hospital, but anyway.
but everybody else did. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I think that. Well, and so, you know, people are gonna. So now we have everything being given, it's just being fed to us, right? Like on our feeds and right? This is what happens. And I find the same thing happens to me, even as smart as I am. I find.
But your progression, though, I really like it, because if you're having a conversation, if your next guest or next week, whenever it is, for ChatGPT or just AI in general, there it is again. It's even we've moved the ball even further of less thinking to a tool doing it for us, or some more noise. I mean,
Right.
to a level that we've never understood or comprehend.
Well-
to where you don't have to know the answer. All you know is how to type it in.
Yeah. So what kind of society does that produce?
Not a good one. That's what I'm
In fact,
fearful
I
of.
have hey Trev, get the
It's really quite concerning, and I'm really curious to
It's
see
the
what
Wally
you're-
one. So
Yeah.
Wally always comes back.
It-
I always say Wally was
Art
the
imitates life,
the most
isn't that?
predictive or predict. All right, so
It couldn't have been more accurate.
here we go. Yeah. All right, so this is actually about senseless leisure, or leisure for my British friends. Basic income and art. Now, this is written from the perspective of singularity, right? Eventually AI and and shit like that takes over, all will displace work for the vast majority of individuals, and humans just aren't useful anymore. So that's why we got to have, and so what this article is really about is why people are saying, well, we're going to have basic, or what's it called, income? What's the income thing? Basic, not basic income, but
Universal basic income.
universal income, where you just
Chill out and float around in a lazy boy.
we're gonna, like, you can't do work anymore because it's all being done by the machines. So we just need to give you money, right? And here we go. This is what happens. This is what happens to us.
There it is.
And yeah, and that picture. So I remember when I saw Wall-E. When did Wall-E come out? Like, I don't know. It was
Early 2000s.
early
I believe.
2000s. When I saw that picture, I thought, when I saw the movie, I thought, this is like so, like, you could see this happening.
Yeah, you can actually see the path. Like, that's
Right.
where we're at. Now, will we be floating around in spaceships and, visiting planets? And I think it happens way before that. I mean, we already got people floating around on lazy boys. It's just
Well,
all day.
if you
all
look at
day
that,
not doing anything.
you look at that picture, and those are basically iPads that are in front of their
Yes.
face, right?
Yeah.
Like, and if you remember in the movie, they don't even. And this came up on a recent episode where I mentioned this, and who was it, Trev, that like squealed because she was like, "I've been saying the same thing about Wall-E." I think it was Blair Lee, but
Yes.
yeah, it was her. You can see it, right? Like, they don't even know that there's a pool, a swimming pool. They don't even know there's a swimming pool because their whole world happens here. And when they talk to each other, they're talking to each other through the screen.
Yeah,
Like, we're there.
we're there.
We're there. The only difference is we're not necessarily sitting next to each. Now, I don't know, because I see a lot of couples in restaurants, and you see them and they both got the phone, right? And you wonder, like, are they talking to each other, like, on the phone?
Sometimes I will text my wife during it because that's the only way I can get her to actually see, hey, I'm here. This is your husband. I'm across the table from you. Can you put the damn phone down?
Okay. So,
Yeah, now you throw in virtual reality and
Yeah.
how that's advanced. Like, you absolutely could live in a world of floating
Right.
around, not doing anything. It's interesting.
all right, so I want to come back to this
It
thing
doesn't
about,
look good.
it doesn't look good.
I saw a stat the other day on to that question. What percentage of people are optimistic about the future and where we're heading? And it was, I don't remember the actual number, but I think we're all kind of where we're at. Like, it doesn't look to be better. I'll put it that way. I think majority of the people
Yeah.
are like, no, I don't see this as we're heading towards anything
Which
that's
comes back to
positive
that thing you said in the beginning.
or
which
what
is-
we would deem positive.
Right, which each generation does better than the previous one. You saw that hockey stick in the 1950s with technology, but now if you ask the younger generation, they're the first one to say, I don't know. I don't necessarily think I'm going to do better than my parents, but all right, so technology. So we talked about technology ruining us. There's another thing too that I want to get into, which is education. So, and boy, you could do a whole series of episodes on what are we doing today with education. But even before we got to the controversies of today in education and whether we should be letting people into schools for reasons other than their actual qualifications, like even before all that, there's something to be said for, like, if you look back, well, actually I'm going to go back to that article that said the Victorian era people were smarter, right? So there was maybe natural selection was the weaker ones were dying off. But there's another thing too, which is maybe they were being taught to think better than what we are now. And if you look, in fact, there's a Trev, get the one about the 1895, the 1895 8th grade final exam. So this is an 8th grade final exam in 1895. 8th grade. There's some commentary here, blah, blah, blah. I think you know what it says is that, is that we couldn't do it today. But here's the exam. So this is the grammar section. Now, notice these are not fill-in-the-blank questions. These are not multiple-choice questions. I mean, not that they're not they are fill-in-the-blanks. They're not multiple-choice questions. They're not true-false. Give the 9 rules for the use of capital letters. Name the parts of speech. Define verse, stanza, paragraph. Principal parts of a verb. Define case. Illustrate each case.
This is awesome. I love this.
What is punctuation? Right. Okay, go down to the math.
Let's do some math.
This one will get you. Name and define the fundamental rules of arithmetic.
Couldn't tell you.
Now, here's my favorite. A wagon box is 2 feet deep, 10 feet long, and 3 feet wide. Now, at this point, I thought I was going to be able to answer this question.
Yep. I'm like,
And then it says, how many bushels of wheat will it hold? I thought all I was going to have to do is multiply 2 times 10 times 3 for the cubic, for the volume. Right? But no, how many bushels of wheat will it hold?
so you got to know a bushel of wheat's volume.
Here you go. Number 4. District number 33 has a valuation of $35,000. What is the necessary levy to carry on a school 7 months at $50 per month and have 104 for it? I don't know.
This is like a college exam today.
Yeah, and a hard one at that.
And a difficult one. Yeah, this is no state school.
Yeah, number 8. Find bank discount of $300 for 90 days, no grace at 10%. So this was the 8th graders. This is what they were being taught.
Yeah, this
and
is
what they could learn.
fantastic.
I don't know, history. What's the history section say, Trev? I would bet that most people today, much less 8th graders, or don't even know what an epoch is.
I don't. What is it?
It's a period of time.
Oh, okay.
Given account of the discovery of America by Columbus. Relate the causes and results of the Revolutionary War. So this was an 8th grade final exam. And I've heard people say this before, that basically most adults today, if you went back and tried to pass a 6th or 7th or 8th grade test.
Well, they had that whole game show with old Jeff. You might be a redneck if. He had the can't beat a 5th grader. And it was along the similar lines. Just
By the way, do you need a refill?
Yes.
I can take a break.
Yeah.
Talk about you might be a redneck if.
But he had a similar premise that here, 5th graders and adults, I mean, you lose what you don't use.
Right.
But this is impressive. I don't ever remember even learning anything close to how to answer these type of questions in its 8th grade.
Yeah.
Like, we absolutely need to get back to like having brains that can answer that sort of thing.
Well, and the thing is, what you notice in those questions is it's not, here you go.
Thank you.
It's not just parroting back information that you memorized, even though in traditional and classical education memorization is a big part of it. But that's when you're younger. And when you get older, you have to learn how to like put ideas together,
Connect them.
critically,
Yep.
draw conclusions, things like this, right? You have to be able to like, what do we got? What is climate? Upon what does climate depend? What is this? What are we looking at?
We're in geography now.
Oh,
You
no,
got
this is
1
still
hour.
the same thing.
You got 1 hour. I mean, these are all day.
How do you account for the extremes of climate in Kansas?
Hello, and this is 1895.
That's what it says. I mean, I don't know. Maybe somebody made this shit up, but
We had all those cows though, so they were producing the methane. So that's where we were
that's
getting
probably the
global warming.
yeah. It all started back then, but so I don't know. Maybe somebody's going to fact check this and discover that somebody made this up. But I've seen things before where the education, the expectations of what we had to learn and the way we were taught 100, 150 years ago was very different. And now what we got is, and it is, I mean,
It needs a lot of work.
well, actually, you got younger kids than me, I think. I mean, you got some that either still in high school or have just but
graduated
recently in high school.
Yes.
So what kind of what did you see happening in terms of what was the work that was being done?
I don't feel like it was really too much different than when I was in high school. Um, maybe a little softer, a little more watered down, but the level of cheating and the ease in which you could cheat because your phones are in the classroom, like I mean, it was.
Yeah, see, I hadn't even thought about
They
that.
don't learn shit. I mean,
Yeah.
they may memorize a little bit of it, but it's definitely gotten easier to get the grade that they need.
Yeah.
I think it's definitely softer, more watered down for sure. You know, it's interesting along the lines of how we're taught. I think. Oh, and you can use your phone. You can Google search like homework. You can search and get the answer. I guess maybe they're trying to teach them how to actually do 2 clicks. Like, don't just type it in and then like actually open up. Maybe that's
Maybe
what
look
they're
at
trying
maybe look at the
to teach.
Um,
But that's what I was going to say. Where you're going with this, I think it's interesting. So maybe you know more about this than I do, but we had some friends that moved from Houston to Germany and staying in touch on the fake book. And the mom was very concerned because in Germany, and I think several countries, I think China kind of does something similar where they basically they cull the herd, right? Like, I mean, they put them in, you get about 4th grade, and you have this big test. And from there, they determine, okay, this group or this child goes to this school, this child goes to this school. And then you have another big one when you get into high school, and it basically boils down to like, you know, Cully's going to be a mechanic, and Michael's going to go towards, you know, like we're going to keep pushing and
Right.
and
astrophysics. Yeah.
astrophysics, and we're gonna and we're going and we're gonna actually invest like start
Now,
to
you're
like
not
peel
talking
off.
about like predetermined, like randomly selected, like they would do like in a communist country
No.
where they just go boom, 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 boom.
No, not
But
predetermined, but it's based on their scores. So there's a lot of pressure on how
Aptitude,
well
right.
these
Yeah.
tests, how well they do on these tests, to determine if the system's going to continue to feed them, so to speak.
Yeah.
And there's a little, I don't know if that's the right answer, but I do like the idea of putting a little more pressure back on. Are you coasting and you're just going to cheat your way through school and not learn shit?
Yeah.
If so, then
Yeah.
get out. Let's go
Yeah.
drive a tractor and let's get it going.
Right,
You know what I
right,
mean?
yeah.
Like, if there's no interest whatsoever in actually making an effort towards learning and bettering yourself, then let's jump out and start driving a dump truck or a tractor and get it going. Nothing against that. That's what my grandfather did, but at 8th grade, moved to big machinery. But it is an example of just, hey, how do we
Yeah.
advance some of this that's
I-
missing?
I remember when I was when I was in elementary school, in junior high, it was and for me when I went to school, elementary school went through 6th grade, so junior high didn't start till 7th grade. So what we noticed after about 2nd grade, 3rd grade, so in the school, let's say there were 5 or 6 4th grade classes, or this was not suburban Houston where there would be 25 or 26 4th grade classes. Right. So there were 5 or 6 4th grade classes. There were 5 or 6 5th grade classes. There were 5 or 6 6th grade. And what you noticed as a kid was every year I was usually always in a class with the same kids. Mm-hmm. Like the same kids who were in like Miss Busby's class in 3rd grade are now in, Mr. Geiger Counter's class in the 6th grade. And there was a guy, he had like a long German name, and it wasn't Geiger Counter, but it was something like
It works.
Yeah. And what we didn't really realize at the time was that was based on kind of our academic level, even at that age.
Geiger Counter's teaching the smarter kids.
I'm not going to say. And so out of 5 or 6 classes, there was like 1 or 2 that were like, maybe probably 1 that were like the really, I'm going to say smart kids. I'm not saying, I'm just using that as a shorthand for
Right.
achieved better grades,
Yes.
better academic performance, right? And then there was like 1 class for the kids that were like the opposite of that, and then there was like 2 or 3 classes or whatever for the kids in the middle, and everybody was kind of always in the, I'm not gonna say which one that I was in, but I did notice that you were kind of, and then when we got to junior high, and even though now we're like changing classes, and you're going to science class and you're going to math class and whatever, it was still like that was when we started to catch on. Like, man, I'm like I've been in the same class with this girl every year, and I've never been in a class with that girl, right? And why? So I think there was probably some of that. Going back to your thing, it's possible maybe we used to do that to some extent.
To some extent,
not channeling them through to like what is your vocation or your career going to be, but there was some acknowledgement of everybody's not
group
the same.
These together,
Right.
Yeah, we had when I was younger, my middle school days was in North Carolina, and the school district that we were in, I remember my parents having a conversation with a teacher because they were blending everyone from someone that will pick up the material quickly to maybe someone that doesn't pick up the material quickly and in between. And what was happening, Michael, is I was able to pick up the material quickly, but because we were spending 2 extra days on it, because this one over here isn't and should be in like dum-dum English or dum-dum math, and they're not in that class, I would begin to find things to entertain myself and others, and I was always in trouble. And so that led to this whole conversation of, and that was where it was exposed. And that's where this school district was trying to blend the masses versus like keep them all together. So it's, I think they're still, I think maybe they were trying to figure it out for sure. I'm sure they were, but also you mix in the gold star, everybody gets a trophy, everybody
We got that right.
like all that's, I mean, can't hurt feelings. People are real sensitive.
Yeah, and we also have this this notion of the and this has been hotly debated lately, but equal opportunities versus equal outcomes, right? James Truslow Adams described a place where everybody had equal opportunity.
Yeah, like the Declaration of Independence is kind of what it sounds like. That framing of all are equal, and
right,
free and at liberty to make it great.
Yeah, do what you're gonna do. But the notion of equal outcomes means that
That's where you had me. I'm telling you, that's where
outcomes is like, now we got to get in there and turn the dials to make things turn out a certain way.
Not everybody is equal.
Yeah,
it's let's measure the outcomes.
Everybody deserves to be basically given the same opportunity.
I think you ought to seriously. I love that quote.
Yeah, we'll make it. We're gonna make a T-shirt.
I'd go.
We're gonna make a T-shirt.
Have a movement. Like, let's get a movement going. Let's get some T-shirts.
A movement.
I mean, we're starting to like come in. So we're 2024 presidential election. Like, let's put together some stuff like this.
That's a year and a half away.
That's what it's about.
Yeah,
that's exactly what it's about.
Yeah.
So have a platform or environment or country, whatever, where anyone and everyone have the same freedom and rights to make it happen.
Right.
But they're not given. You know what I mean?
Yeah. There's a lot of, but I think that, so the challenge for us now, because that's the point, which is, okay, we've described the situation, we described like, why do we care? Because we don't want to end up looking like that picture of those people in Wall-E. What do we do about it? And I think it's a challenge to know, like, what do you do about it? Because we're certainly not advocating for some sort of like, well, let's just like eliminate everybody who doesn't measure up to a certain level of intellect or talent or something like that.
Right.
But nonetheless, if you've created a society where people don't really think for themselves anymore. For example, we had a comment on the YouTube channel. One of the guys that was on a previous episode, Jason Lee, was talking about, basically he was saying it's not the system, it's the environment. And he works with a lot of people. He works with a lot of like young guys who are in really rough situations. But he sees where it's the environment, it's what was happening in their family. It was right. It's like it's not that the system is rigged against them. It's their environment, and he gives some examples. Well, we got a comment on the YouTube channel.
The hand they had been dealt, so to speak.
Right, and somebody, I forget who it was, left this comment and said their particular environment really means I forget the exact words, but he said like the completely corrupt system. So he threw this. He said yeah. Particular environment really means the totally corrupt system. And I thought, okay, now he didn't give us any ideas. He didn't put any input in for like what do we do about that totally corrupt system. Mm-hmm. But that's what he said. He said it's commonly known as. Well, it's not so commonly known as that, but
to be.
But the point is, I don't know that guy and what was in his head when he put that comment, but my spidey sense says that that's a notion that is in his head, and he has no real reason. Like he hasn't like worked through to that conclusion other than he's been like told that, and he's just subscribed to that idea. And so as soon as he sees somebody say something different from that, he doesn't really like listen to what that person is saying. He just goes, he's just like, I know what that is. That's the corrupt system. And everyone knows it.
There's a lot of that. There's certainly a lot of that.
You know I'm getting at?
I do. I'm just curious, though, if you think through that, though, just to give him his fair shake, is he saying that the environment is what it is because the system is against a particular person or culture or whatever the case may be, that has
I think
led
that's
to
the
them?
point. Right, yeah, I think that's the point. Yeah.
I think there's some truth to that for sure, but how you get out of that, I mean, you can obviously see that today, that it's everywhere, but...
So, all right, we're running a little long, but that's okay. Because this has come up on other episodes. What about the system? Well, and when we say the system, that can mean a lot of different things, right? It's not like one system. But where do you see where whatever the system is in the particular instance is really kind of rigged against somebody?
Where it's really rigged against someone, I don't know. I don't necessarily...
I think it's hard to come up with
Yeah, it is.
an example of that.
The only thing I can think of, and I don't know if it's the system as much as maybe... I'm trying to think of the word. I saw this thing, and it was pretty good. And it's not necessarily the system. It's not the system. It's just maybe a better understanding of the difference in the hands that we've been dealt, some versus others, and the struggle that they have,
right?
One versus the other,
Right.
But I don't see it as a system.
We're like
that's against them.
Trev, you hang out with the hipsters. What is it that people think is the problem with the system? You got anything on that?
Cis straight white men.
Cis straight white men.
Everything is blamed on.
That's the system? Cis straight white men.
Yeah.
That's not a system, though. That's just...
No. See? See?
Now you get it.
I kind of walked into that one, didn't I? Yeah.
No, I don't see us. I don't know. Maybe we're arguing, or not arguing, but trying to unpack semantics.
Yeah, it's too big. But all right, so what have we determined here? We determined that it's possible that we're not as smart as we were as a society, we're not sure whether it's like our actual IQs have diminished, or we're just not as good at thinking anymore. And maybe there's one impacts the other, right?
I'd be curious to, the study that was on there. I'd be curious, and maybe it's just we haven't had the technology around long enough, and it's still too much in its infancy. But you would think, with the amount of MRIs that have been done on the brain, that there would be some form of, here's how much the brain lit up when it was asked questions 20 years ago versus how much the brain lights up today when asked a question.
Wow, yeah, that's really interesting.
Where are the hot spots? And it's a noticeable, for instance, one of the things, just real quick, I saw this study where they interviewed a bunch of first responders and nurses and people that have ran into buildings on fire that saved someone, very heroic type things.
Right.
Scan their brain. Bloop. Then they also scanned serial killers, people that have just serial killers in general. Nothing I need to get. And one of the things they notice is there is a measurable difference between the hippopotamus or whatever. I think it's the hippocampus. But there's a measurable difference between the hippopotamus in someone that has empathy towards people and those that don't have them.
Yeah.
And I would imagine if they can pick up on that, if we're at a point now where we can see, okay, serial killers have no empathy, they don't give a shit. They're maybe logically, I know if I do this, you hurt, but other than that, I don't care.
We can see that in their brain.
But we can see it. Surely we can see we're getting dumber. And I guarantee you we can.
We can see whether we're getting dumber. That's what we need. Yeah. Are we getting dumber? And the question then would be, why? And I think it's all these things that, there's the evolutionary biologist view, which is that one study that said, well, now that we're keeping more people alive, the stronger, don't dominate. That's the evolutionary biology view. There's kind of the I guess anthropologists, social scientists view that says, well, we've changed how we're educating people, and so we're not encouraging, in our effort to make everybody the same, have the same outcomes, we're not encouraging and teaching how to think. In fact, there was another. I had another article. It was written by a law professor who basically said, I think it was. Do you have that one, Travis? Something about the diseducation of millennials. So you and I are exempt from this, not being millennials, but undoing the diseducation of millennials. This is a law professor who said, I teach, well, you got to keep, it's okay. Just zoom in a little bit more. Here we go. For several years now, my students have been mostly millennials. Contrary to the stereotype, listen up, millennials.
Mm-hmm.
I have found that the vast majority of them do want to learn. But true to stereotype, most of them cannot think.
Oh, done.
Don't know
Proven.
Don't know very much, and are enslaved to their appetites and feelings. Their minds are held hostage in a prison fashioned by elite culture and their undergraduate professors. I like that he left undergraduate professors outside of elite culture. Mm-hmm. They cannot learn until their minds are freed. So in his, let's see, I found my students especially impervious to the ancient wisdom of foundational texts such as Plato's Crito and the Code of Hammurabi. So they dismissed these old things as classist, racist. So basically, his students basically just dismiss everything traditional, everything. So they're in this frame of mind that says, that has these ideas in it that have been sort of lobbed in there as they've grown up, and that's it. That's their whole That's their whole framework for thought. And but for him to say, and this is a law professor, so law professors aren't careless with words. Mm-hmm. And he says most of them cannot think.
That's interesting. But he points to cannot think because of an elite culture. And there's a lot there. Like when you say elite culture, that's pretty.
Yeah.
And they're undergrad professors. I get it.
So
he's a law professor. They brainwashed him.
Those dumbass undergrad professors.
Yeah, but there's a lot of truth to that as well. I mean, I think he's kind of throwing a good jab there to the undergrad professors because they get in there and they mold these impressionable minds.
Right,
and,
instead of like
and everybody's
teaching them
racist and that's offensive and that hurts my feelings. Instead of teaching them how to think.
How to think, right? That's really what he's saying is instead of teaching them how to think, they've just had their minds filled up with a bunch of stuff, a bunch of ideas and notions that may or may not be true, but the point is they're not thinking anymore. They're just
interesting.
Just subscribing to these ideas.
That's a good find.
Yeah. Yeah.
You found that too?
I got a bunch of them, man. Yeah. When I see interesting things, I put a little bookmark. Like,
so when you said you had nothing to do, you were joking.
Yeah. All right. I think it's good. We're running up around an hour, and so nobody will watch the whole thing, but we got some good like clips that we can put out later as little bits and bites. So thanks.
And the Weller is good too.
Weller,
thank you.
Yeah, thanks to Chris Bentley
Thank you, Chris.
Yeah, who
he's in the pen right now, or
if he's not, he's about to be. Yeah.
Is he able to watch this? And
I don't know. Minimum security federal prison. I know it's. I don't think they get.
I'll say thank you to him nonetheless.
Yeah,
maybe he catches it.
See him in a few years. All right, Cully Templeton, thank you for coming down.
Michael, this has been fun, man.
Yeah, it has been fun.
This is great.